Hey YouTube, it's your girl Chic from Chic Say What. I am coming on tonight. I wanted to talk about a Black woman who was recently uh, found found in the bushes. She was murdered. It appears to be at the hands of her boyfriend. So I wanted to come on here and just talk about her, humanize her, and just to be be another person, to bring awareness to situations such as these where women are murdered at the hands of their partners. It happens, in relationships with Black women and Black men, Black women and non-Black men. So it seems like when it happens at the hands of a non-Black man, when there's a woman who's murdered, the conversation of divestment comes up, and a focus turns to, okay, well, why are Black women divesting? Why are they kind of going away from the Black man to try something different, only for the end result to be their demise? And then on the other hand, there's Black women who have the argument of, okay, well, that may be the case in some situations. However, more often than not, Black women are killed at the hands of at the hands of Black men. So I wanted to just talk about Kathleen Moore, talk about her case, also just talk about some stats pertaining to Black women and Black girls, and just murder rates, in comparison to women of other cultural groups. So let me go ahead. And if you're joining the live, thank you. Welcome. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when I go on live. If you catch the playback, thank you also for joining. Please drop a comment and let's get into it. So I want to share my screen, and I want to learn who Kathleen Moore is. So this article comes from CBSnews.com. And it reads, boyfriend of missing Florida woman charged with murder. Quote, we wish Colin would provide us the information of where Kathleen is. So Kathleen has since been found. She has since been found. So, but this is just an article pertaining to her situation. She was found not that far from the boyfriend's home. Um, the guy, what was his name? Colin, the boyfriend, let's see, Colin Knapp. She was found, not too far from his home, underneath some shrubs. It looks like, someone just walking past found her, and it looked as though her body was intentionally hidden. But thankfully, someone did locate her body. Also, her cell phone was found also in a trash can. So let's get into this article. It reads, a man has been charged with second-degree murder in the case of a missing Florida woman who disappeared a week ago. So this article was dated December 7th. So Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nacco said at a news conference on Monday that Colin Knapp, 30, was arrested after tests showed blood on his clothing linked to 34-year-old Kathleen Moore. So this is Kathleen. Moore's body has not been found. Well, let me see. Let me share a different article because Kathleen's body has been found. So let me share another article because she was found. So we're going to share an updated article because she has been found. Okay. So let me switch gears and we're going to share a different article so we can have the latest information. Let me see. All right. Okay. So let's so this is on WFLA.com. So this is like a Florida news channel, but I'll go ahead and play the audio so we can hear what they're saying.
Woman Kathleen Moore. Her body was found near the home of her boyfriend, Colin Knapp. He has been charged with second-degree murder and was charged yesterday. 8 Inside's Jeff Patterson joins us now live in Newport Richey with today's big development. Jeff.
Good evening, Josh. Well, Sheriff Chris Nacco just spoke to us a short time ago, confirming that investigators have found the body of Kathleen Moore in a heavily wooded area behind her boyfriend's home. Today, Pasco County detectives and crime scene technicians spent the day searching for evidence inside of Colin Knapp's home. From Eagle 8 HD, we could see deputies in the woods behind Knapp's home. The sheriff's office says someone walking in the woods found the body of a woman there. Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nacco now confirming the remains found in the woods are those of Kathleen Moore.
I can say, she is deceased. Today, we positively identified her body based on tattoos.
As deputies were searching his home, Colin Knapp made his first appearance in front of a Pasco County judge.
You've been set at no bond in this case. Do you wish to have an attorney to represent you in this matter?
And Kathleen Moore's friends came to Knapp's home just to see for themselves what is going on.
It's unbelievable. Like it doesn't feel real.
Noelle Custodio says she first met Moore and Colin Knapp when they all worked at Applebee's together.
You just can't put into words how you feel. It's just, you want her to come home, but it's not, you're not going to hear her laugh anymore. She's not going to call you out on your BS, it's not going to happen anymore.
Samantha Knight says she is also here because she's a friend of Kathleen Moore and says it's just difficult to accept that she's gone.
Nobody deserves it, but especially somebody as sweet and nice and is such a good soul as her.
Sheriff Nacco telling us that when investigators found Kathleen Moore's body in that heavily wooded area, it appears there was a deliberate attempt to conceal her under heavy brush. And I just spoke to some of Kathleen Moore's friends out here a short time ago. They're obviously very upset by all of this, but they say at least this brings them closure. Live in Pasco County, Jeff Patterson, 8 on your side.
Okay, so that's the news article or the news report. So let me see. Let's get into the details for what the article reads. Let's see. I'm going to stop it. I want the commercials to play. Let's get into it. Okay. Make sure the sound is off. Okay. So the article reads, Newport Richey, Florida. Kathleen Moore's body was found in the wooded area of Newport Richey on Tuesday. The Pasco County Sheriff confirmed, according to the sheriffs, that a decomposing body found by someone walking in the Caramel Avenue area around 11:30 a.m. was positively identified as Moore based on her tattoos. It says the area where the body was found was the last known location of 34-year-old Moore, who was reported missing last week. The missing person investigation became a homicide investigation Monday when her boyfriend, Colin Knapp, was arrested. She was about 50 yards northeast of Colin Knapp's home. Was barely a heavy brush. She was actually covered. You can almost describe she was definitely covered on purpose to make sure nobody could come upon her. Noko said the break in the case on Tuesday came from the Pasco County community working together with the sheriff's office. Last night, we put out a plea for help, and they did. At 11:30 this morning, we got the call because citizens were out there helping us, he said. Sergeant Michael Rosa with the Pasco Pasco County Sheriff's Office Major Crimes Unit said it's too early in the investigation to determine or release information on how Moore died. The sheriff office officially called it a homicide on Monday night when they arrested Knapp, Moore's on again and off again boyfriend. Moore's body had not yet been found when he was arrested Monday, but deputies noticed that the blood evidence found in the county landfill was enough to arrest Knapp. A judge on Tuesday ordered he be held without bond and said new developments in the case made it clear it's a murder. Noko on Tuesday promised to get justice for Moore. Quote, I wish to God we could bring her back. She's with God now. She's with the angels. We pray for her. We pray for her family right now because they're going through so much. The sheriff said, but with that, we will bring her justice. We will bring her family justice. The sheriff also had a message for anyone experiencing domestic violence. Maybe more sacrifices she went through is to save somebody else, he said. If this can save you because you're in a horrible domestic violence relationship, get out of it. Because if there's something positive that can come out of her death, it's that someone else will live. So, it's a sad situation. I'm wondering, I've seen like different clips and things of, I guess, surrounding this case, Kathleen Moore's murder case, but I hadn't seen any interviews or clips of anyone that looked to be blood relatives, a blood family of hers. So I'm wondering, as far as, her actual blood family, was she close to her family? Was she adopted? Where are the family members that look like her? Was anyone in her family, as far as the family that looked like her? Because I know a lot of people consider people family who aren't necessarily blood, but I'm talking in this situation about a blood relation. She clearly was in an interracial relationship, as a lot of people are. But with that being said, I wonder, like, what type of connection did she have with her blood relatives? And just from like a safety standpoint, as far as people checking in on her, knowing how she's doing, knowing her headspace, the headspace of the man she was dating, things like that. Because a lot of times, people go through things, and it's easy for it to be hidden and not detected when they're removed from their family members, such as like your parents, siblings, things of that nature. So I just can't help but to wonder what her relationship was like with her family, her blood relatives, because I haven't seen any clips of them speaking or read any quotes coming from like a mother or father, brother, sister, anybody like that. And I just believe that it's just important for when you're going through something that people are aware of it. Um, Even, the people, the friends, in the interview, the clip that we watched that talked about Kathleen, and they said they knew her, they met her, from work, her and the on again, off again boyfriend. No one indicated if there was any known issues between the two within their relationship. I didn't hear anybody talk about that, because for him, for this man to suddenly resort to killing his, who people knew him as being, the boyfriend of Kathleen, to me, I would think there were some signs of or indication of some type of abuse prior to, or signs of him just being, mentally, emotionally off balance, because to just suddenly just kill someone, typically, there are signs or things that lead up to that. And, sometimes they go unnoticed, but for it to be as drastic as it was with him taking her life, I just find it hard to believe that there weren't other people around in their lives that didn't take notice of um, his erratic behavior or him just kind of being off, whether he was possessive, had a short temper, things of that nature. And, I want to also just get into some information or basically some statistical information pertaining to just Black women and Black girls, and how a lot of times it a lot of times, it just seems as though, like, just as in general, we're not a group that's protected like other groups. So this site that I'm sharing right now is for theguardian.com, and it reads at least 4 Black women and girls were murdered per day in the US last year. So it says, as homicides surged across the US last year, the number of Black females killed increased sharply as well. Goes on to say at least 4 Black women and girls were murdered per day in the United States in 2020, according to statistics released by the FBI last week, a sharp increase compared with the year before. The FBI recorded at least 405 additional murders of Black women and girls last year as homicides surged across the country. And experts caution that even that stark number possibly represents an undercount. To families of victims and local activists, the release of the data is just the latest reminder that violence against Black women and girls often goes ignored and should be made a more urgent public priority. So again, as I went back to, as far as go back to Kathleen Moore's case, for the end result to be her life taken, I just find it hard to believe that prior to, there weren't signs that this man who she was in a relationship on and off again was off balance. Like, I just can't believe that. And I just can't help but to wonder if this is just another example of how, just when it comes to the Black woman or the Black girl, dysfunctional behavior is just ignored, overlooked, dismissed. Or even, like, we often hear about cases or things that happen, sometimes it'll make the news as far as things that happen with Black women and Black girls, and it doesn't even get the same amount of coverage as it does for cases involving Black women, white women and white girls. It doesn't make the news like that. A lot of times I'll learn about a missing persons report with the in regards to a Black woman or Black girl. I'll learn about it through a YouTube, through a YouTuber who will talk about it. It's not that, okay, I saw it on the, mainstream media or the national media. Like, it's not there. It's, based off of, if you go off of just mainstream media, you really wouldn't think Black girls or Black women really go missing almost at all. Like, because it's like, it doesn't make it there. Like, you'll hear about the cases of, okay, if a Black girl, Black woman was murdered, that's going to make the news. But as far as, like, say if a Black woman or Black girl is, like, missing and, there's a search for her, like that, you don't really see like a very large news presence. Or say if you do see a news presence of a murder of a Black woman or Black girl, it's almost like, okay, it's reported and then it's moved on. They move on to the next story and it's not revisited to try to find answers, like with a white girl, a white woman. It's just not the same energy. So that's what I've come to notice, and many people have come to notice. And thank God we do have this thing called YouTube, where YouTubers can come out here and spread the word and give visibility to Black women and Black girls, because I've actually seen where these YouTubers will do updates and they'll be like, okay, this person has been found, or, so to me, I just feel like it does make a difference when there's a lot of eyes, a lot of hands in the mix with trying to search for, a missing person. Of course it does. So I think it is a blessing that we do have the YouTubers that will, post, when they learn of someone within the Black community missing, just to kind of get the word out. So, but I'll go continue on with this article. It says, to families of victims and local activists, the release of the data is just the latest reminder that violence against Black women and girls often goes ignored and should be made a more urgent public priority. What is sad is that a lot of cases aren't taken too seriously. It's just another Black girl, said Jennifer Redmond, whose 19-year-old daughter, Soraya Jade, was killed last September. Soraya Jade was sitting in a Sacramento, California apartment with friends when someone started shooting through the windows and walls. She tried to dodge the bullets, but was hit and later died at the hospital. Since her death, Soraya's parents and siblings have fought to keep focus on her loss. They have held marches and passed out flyers and have urged police to keep investigating the case. So it looks like this is a picture of Soraya over here. Beautiful young Black woman, 19, killed last September in Sacramento, California. My home state. I'm from the Bay Area in Northern California. Quote, for them to get recognized, the parents have to go out there, make the noise, let people know, hey, this is what's going on. Pay attention, Redmond told The Guardian. And it is just unfortunate that that's all we have. It's almost like we only just have like spread the word within our community versus like nationwide, like visibility, like other cultural groups, in particular, white cultural groups, the white cultural group. So more vulnerable to violence. So the increase in murders of Black women comes as the overall U.S. murder rate rose nearly 30% during the pandemic, the biggest jump in 6 decades. The number of people murdered increased sharply across racial groups and in cities, big and small. Most of America's homicide victims remain men, and Black men and boys continue to face the highest overall risk of homicide, with at least 2,400 additional Black men and boys killed in 2020 compared with 2019, according to homicide data reported to the FBI. The rising murder rate has affected Black women across the country. Baltimore, Maryland recorded the highest ever murder of women killed in 2020, with at least 48 women murdered throughout the year, many of them Black. And like I said, earlier in this live stream, unfortunately, most murders of Black women is at the hands of other Black men. It's not, at the hands of other, people of other cultural groups. So as I talk about, divestment, I've been hearing, as people talk about cases involving, in particular, now this is the latest case I'm hearing where there's a Black woman and a non-Black man, in this case, a white man. A lot of talk I'm hearing, and particularly from Black men, Black YouTubers, is, okay, well, this is why you shouldn't divest. This is why you shouldn't date outside of your race. But when you're looking at the numbers, the data doesn't show that most Black women die at the hands of non-Black people. That's not the case. It's actually at the hands of Black men. And I just can't help but to wonder, or to me, what makes sense to me is that maybe a lot of these Black women are choosing to date outside of the Black community for reasons pertaining to, say, one being safety and protection and things like that. They're trying to try something different. And in a small percentage, because I still seem like a small percentage of cases when it is an interracial relationship, there has been situations where it hasn't worked out, where that white man, wasn't so nice to that black woman. Remember that football player who beat up his black girlfriend like really, really bad? I don't even know what the latest is with that case. I might have to research that one. Can't remember his name right now. But basically the situation, it was almost like it was just dismissed to, oh, well, he was just off his meds. He got bipolar, it was like dismissed. But, when it's, something takes place and it's at the hands of a black man, it's like mental health. It's like that's not a thing in our community. And you're just, they want to hold you, the law want to hold you accountable, but it's just not the same energy with men sometimes in domestic situations when there's an interracial relationship. It's just like it's not the same energy. So let's see. This article goes on to say it's not yet clear how much of an increase in the killings of Black women last year was related to domestic violence and how much might be caused by rising community violence or other factors, according to Richard Rosenfeld, a criminologist in the University of Missouri, St. Louis, who studies murder trends. But advocates and experts said the stark rise makes it clear it's time to address the factors that have long made Black women face a 3 times higher homicide rate than white women, as well as why their risk of being murdered increased sharply last year. Wow. And, a lot of times I'll hear Black women say, we're not protected. What's your thoughts on that? And we have, most of our Black women are not married. Most of our Black women, if they are mothers, they're single parents. Like the last time I checked, about 80% of babies were born out of wedlock. So as these Black women are talking about being underprotected, yes, they're underprotected. They don't have men. They don't have men in their homes collectively. A lot of our Black men are locked up in jail and in prison. Then we have, of course, high numbers of homosexuality. So there's that. So it's multiple reasons why Black women are starting to divest or look or cross, date interracially, with crossover to try something new, because really even just within, there's more women than men. So even if Black women did not do that, it just still wouldn't, from a numbers perspective, line up for every Black woman to have a Black man. The numbers just aren't there. So I can see, I'm not against the whole interracial dating, but I feel like anytime you're dating anyone, you definitely, you have to vet them. You can't, just because someone is what, it's like we live in this world, white is right. So because someone is white, or even say within the Black community, someone's really light, it's just like they're closer, from an aesthetic wise, or from their physical appearance, they look closer to white. So it's like the world is conditioned, white is right. So I feel like a lot of times Black women may even choose to date white men just because it just looks like it's just better. Just as I feel like there's some Black men who date white women because they have that same mindset. And anyone with common sense knows that you got good and bad people in all cultural groups, all skin tones. So it's not determined based on your race, religion, culture, like none of that. It has to be, it's determined by that individual. So I just feel like that me as a woman speaking to women, I feel like we can do a better job with vetting these men that we date, and not just judging them based on the surface, or just because, oh, well, I'm just trying to try something new outside of the Black community, so let me cross over here to this cultural group. Like, okay, well, just because they're an Asian cultural group, Hispanic, white, like that don't mean that you still can't still hold them to the same high standard as you would in your own cultural group. That doesn't mean, okay, well, they get a pass to call you out your name, to disrespect you, to hit you, just because, okay, their skin is something different, something that you perceive or you feel society perceive to be more favorable. We just still have to just use discernment, common sense, and it's important too, as I talked about, with Kathleen, I questioned where was her blood family, to not just remove yourself from your family. Somebody, as I say, somebody got to know what's going on. Somebody got to be able to tell the story. And a lot of times too, and I don't know if that was the case with Kathleen, when women are in abusive relationships, a lot of times that man will isolate them from their family and loved ones. So again, these are back to the signs that we have to pay attention to. Like you can't ignore the signs, because the sign doing that will get you 6 feet under. Like there's a few cases I've learned just since the weekend where the Black woman, or the woman period, is just no longer with us because that man, that baby daddy, that ex-husband, they went off the deep end and snapped. And I don't know in these situations if the women just didn't take their threat seriously. They dismissed it. They thought they can handle it. But when you see signs of dysfunction, or signs that somebody's not, someone is unbalanced, you can't ignore them and you have to talk about them. So let's continue on with this article. It seems like it has a lot of, good statistical information that I'm learning a lot of new things. I hope you are too, or anyone who comes across this live or this playback, they're able to take away some information from it that can maybe even save their life or someone who they know life. So it goes on to say, there's never been a moment in society where there's been a reckoning with the particular kinds of violence that's meted out against Black women, said Kimberly Crenshaw, a Black feminist legal scholar. There are many factors that Black women more vulnerable that there are many factors that make Black women more vulnerable to violence, including widespread access to firearms and barriers to access of preventative services and mental health care. Factors that probably worsened during the pandemic, Crenshaw said. During the pandemic, a lot of people were kind of in the house. People weren't outside as much. I had heard that even like during that time, even with the little baby, with kids, like abuse increased. So like kids who normally would, have an outlet to get out of the home and go to school, like with being in the home, for longer periods of time, they endured abuse more. So I can see that happening. I also heard, as far as with domestic violence, there was an increase in that. And it was just crazy to me, back during that time when I heard about that, with like how they talked about, I even heard someone talk about with football, and, when the conversation was coming up, last year, as far as with football coming back on and things like that, people I was hearing people say that it was said that, bringing football back was going to help a lot of people, because it would allow, say, for men to have something to an outlet, and it would minimize any abuse that may have been taking place in the home at the hands of, the man, because he's just putting, all his pressures, on the wife, the children. So they talked about how, football was a kind of like a, what do you call it, a de-stressor, where, that man could kind of sit down, let his hair down and get into the game. And when I was just hearing all of that, it just sounded so crazy to me, because, I've never been in a domestic situation. However, growing up as a kid, I've been in a household where there's been domestic violence, and, had relatives who had it taking place in their home. But as far as me personally being in like a domestic situation where, I was physically abused, like I've never experienced that. So when that information came out pertaining to football and domestic violence, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But when I thought about it on a deeper level, it made sense. And, it's just very disheartening that everyone's home isn't their safe haven. Some people, the workplace is their safe haven, or school. And I just think that's unfortunate, because I feel like everyone's home should be their safe haven. And the reality of the matter is that it's not. So, what else this article says? And then it says, and the intensely unequal way that coronavirus affected Americans of color almost certainly played a role in worsening violence against women. She added, many Black women are essential workers who had to continue working outside their homes during the pandemic. Quote, does the loss of employment force them into circumstances that put them at greater risk of violence and death? Crenshaw asked. Does the fact that Black women are disproportionately the head of household and chief economic resource mean that they had to risk everything in order to just survive? It's unfortunate. As I mentioned, most Black women are not married. Most of them are, if they are parents, they're single parents. They're basically holding the show down, holding things down on their own. Rose Page, the founder of the advocacy group Black Femicide US, said the increase in murders of Black women in 2020 did not surprise her. In her work as a nurse, Page listened for years as Black women and girls described the history of abuse they had experienced, or knowing someone else who was abused or murdered. Black women and girls have been indoctrinated to believe everyone matters but themselves, Page says. And I think, even just with this energy, as we talk about the violence against Black women, I hear a lot of chatter in these YouTube streets about Black women and having masculine energy and all of this. Well, when you hear numbers like these, and you hear about all the violence that's the violence towards Black women and Black girls, to me, it makes sense that that is a great contributor to a lot of Black women having masculine energy. If they're running or walking around in these streets feeling unprotected, because first of all, they didn't have a father in the house to protect them. So they don't even know what being protected looks like. But all they know is like, okay, all we got is mama, my sisters, maybe my little brother. I got I'm the older sibling, I'm the older sister, I got to hold it down. So all they know is to just hold down the fort, because it's like, well, I don't have anybody. Like, I personally grew up in a family that was mostly females, mostly women, girls. So there was a couple of boys, I have one brother, a couple of cousins, but it was mostly girls. So us girls didn't have this energy of, oh, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna get my brother, I'm gonna get, like, we didn't have, it wasn't that, because it was like women, and then my mother, grew up, and basically that was the same thing, with her. Three girls, one boy. Like, there was no men that you're running to protect you. So you learn to kind of protect yourself. So I think a lot of the masculine energy that a lot of Black women in our community do have, a lot of it is stemmed from things like this, where they've witnessed the abuse onto women, or they've endured it themselves. So all they know is to just be in this defense mode. That's all they know. So what they say, you're a product of your environment. And if that's been your story, to change from that and suddenly just be operating in your femininity, like, clearly it's easier it's easier said than done, because, just take, myself, for example, I said, I grew up in an environment where it was just mostly women, not that many men. So I was definitely, I'm not your softest, woman. I kind of can have a hard exterior, but I will say, being a married woman of 17 years, I had to learn just within a relationship to rest in my femininity, to be softer, to trust, okay, my husband got this. So that makes a difference when you have a man in your corner that you trust, who's shown you that you can trust them, then you're like, okay, it's kind of like you can exhale and there's a weight lifted off of you. And I see that other women who don't have that, who aren't fortunate enough to have that, they still operate, in their masculine energy, because they don't have what it is I have, where, okay, they have a man in their life that's saying, hey, I love you. I'm going to protect you. I got you. You do not have to operate in this manner anymore. You do not have to operate as though you're moving solo in these streets. Like, so, and then, and then with these women who are operating in their masculine energy, it's not so easy for them to turn that off, to even say, get with the man who's looking for a woman who operates in her feminine energy. So it's just like, it's just, just a bad situation all around, because it's like, okay, what they say, the older you get, the more set in your ways you are. So it's not so easy for these women to just suddenly do an about face and to switch over to operate in this feminine energy, because they just never really did it, even though they may look pretty or feminine, but that energy that they give, not so much, and I see it, I see it within the women, just within my family. I see it, but I recognize where that energy comes from. And the only thing that I hope is that they stop to recognize where it comes from, and then reflect and really take in, okay, well, by me being this way, this may be impacting me and my relationships with men, because this masculine energy can be a lot and can sometimes it can overshadow really the man, to where the man, it's like it's two men in the relationship, and then it's just, next thing you know, the relationship is gone, it's over with, because the man's feeling like, okay, everything is always up for debate, everything's always up, for a battle to fight. Like, it's like when I, at an early age, I got married at 23, but before then, I got my husband at right before I turned 20. I was 19. I still had to learn how to calm it down. I was very argumentative. I grew up in a household with women. So my husband, most men are not argumentative. So I had to learn to not do that, because I would be arguing with myself. So I don't do that as much anymore. Definitely, I don't do that really with him, because he doesn't argue. So it's just little things I had to learn to change, but they were things for the better. That's the thing. And I think a lot of women don't recognize that the change can be for the better. They look at it as like, oh, well, you just need to accept me for who I am. This is just me. I'm misunderstood. Okay, well, if that's how you feel, you also got to accept the consequences of that. The result, the consequence being you just being by yourself. So if you're okay with just going through this thing called life by yourself, then so be it. But if you're not okay with that and you want companionship, then maybe you need to stop and reflect on how you may be coming off to other people, in particular men. So that's just kind of like food for thought. But that's just speaking on just, that masculine energy that a lot of our Black women do have. And, these numbers, this article is just like, it just kind of gives a background as to where a lot of this energy may come from. Article goes on to say, when things get rough, Black women are the first to be harmed, said Ori Monroe, an organizer with Black Femicide US and co-founder of Black Women Lead Black Femi Fund. It feels like nobody cares. Before the pandemic, Black women were twice as likely as white women to encounter an offender armed with a handgun, according to the statistics from the National Crime Victimization Survey, Rosenfield said. And homicides of Black women appear to have been on the rise even before the 2020 murders spike, according to data from Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Coffee Davis, an activist from Little Rock, Arkansas, says she had noticed a rise in the murders of Black women and girls in Arkansas going back to 2018, but that she felt that nobody in the community was paying attention or noticed. Now, the day you hear somebody say that about white girls, like, y'all remember that white girl that was not that long ago that was missing? It's like the whole world stopped. It's almost like we forgot about a pandemic when that little white girl went missing, and then her presumed, I think we learned her husband, uh, he was on the run and they were searching for him. It was all kinds of energy put onto that case. But I can't recall with a Black woman or Black girl ever a case having that much energy. It is what it is. So she goes on to say it makes you feel invisible or like nobody cares. And that's how a lot of Black women feel. That's why a lot of them run around and say, we don't feel protected. We feel under protected. In June, Davis organized a march in Little Rock to draw attention to the toll of Black femicide. Similar demonstrations were held this year in Chicago, Illinois, and Atlanta, Georgia. At the march, Davis read out loud the names of 92 murdered Black women and girls. Most of the women were killed by an intimate partner, the rest typically by someone else they knew, Davis said. A friend and an acquaintance, someone else's boyfriend. One 10-year-old Black girl was shot this spring after her mother's boyfriend got into an argument in a public park, Davis said. Another 13-year-old Black girl, Ariana Staggers, was killed in a drive-by shooting while inside her home in North Little Rock this spring. There are signs that the higher rate of fatal violence against Black women is continuing this year. Through September 29th, Black Femicide U.S. had tracked 1,068 Black women murdered across the U.S. this year, Davis said. Focusing on the murders of Black women can be difficult, several activists said, because it requires reckoning with the violence perpetuated within communities and within families. So there's a lot of information in this article. It's a lot of statistical information, just very, it's very sad. We're almost through with this article. What else it says? Activists and survivors had a range of views on the roles they thought law enforcement or new criminal sanctions should play in preventing homicides of Black women and girls. Crenshaw, who helped found the hashtag Say Her Name campaign to highlight Black women killed by the police, said that calls to respond to Black women's murders were more policing. Don't take into account the way that police themselves don't make Black women safe. Many of the Black women whose names we say were killed when the police were called to help them. Wow. But all agree that intense efforts are needed in order to prevent the killings of Black women. There needs to be a fundamental paradigm shift towards addressing violence as a public health issue, said Tanya Sharp, the director of the Center for Research and Innovation for Black Survivors and Homicide Victims at the University of Toronto. Acknowledging the way of violence can spread in communities like the virus and intervening in more comprehensive ways could help people who want to reduce killing and gain some traction, she said. Davis, the Little Rock activist, said she hoped for more prevention programs and more support, in particular for Black women who are experiencing domestic violence. So this is Soraya Redmond, the 19-year-old murdered in Chicago in Sacramento last fall, was the youngest of 3 children. Her parents, Jennifer and Clifford Redmond, said she loved her family and friends in Jordan tennis shoes fiercely. The Redmonds said they had responded differently to their daughter's passing. Clifford's still angered, he said, especially when packages with shoes or equipment for the nail business Soraya hoped to start arrived in the mail. It's hard to raise a baby from birth, spoil it, have it become your best friend and then have it end abruptly, he said. So it looks like this is a family picture. For Jennifer, photos and items for Soraya bring a mix of comfort and sadness. She since held weekly marches in honor of her daughter and started a Facebook page to keep her memory alive. I keep her name and face out there because I want everybody to have her face embedded in their head and have her name ringing in their head, Jennifer said. Soraya's parents said they are troubled by the deaths of other Black women who lose their lives to gun violence. It seems like more Black young girls are dying over things that have nothing to do with them. They may not be the intended victim, but the game has changed now and you can get a gun anywhere, Clifford said. There has yet to be any arrest made in Soraya's case, and her mother says the lack of accountability for her daughter's death has ramifications beyond this case. They're not going to get away with this, Jennifer said. It's not fair to my daughter and the other Black women and girls out there that are getting killed by their peers. It's not fair that all these people are losing their lives. So it's a sad situation, but that's the reality in our community when it comes to Black women, Black girls. I can only hope that there will be a shift where Black women, Black girls will start to feel more protected, and particularly more protected by the Black men, the Black boys within our community. And even though, really, as far as with the very few marriages we do have in our community, most Black men do marry Black women. I will say that. But there are a lot of Black men who are higher earners who do choose to go outside of the Black community for their partners. But I just think, in general, like I said, most Black men are with Black women. I can just only hope that, those relationships turn into strong marriage unions where a Black man can be in the home to protect his woman, to protect his children. Because another stat is, most children who endure child abuse, it's done at the hands of a step parent. So a way that we can combat that is to have more, households where there is the biological mother and father in the home raising the children. But yeah, it's just, the case with Kathleen Moore is very disheartening, but I want to just come out here and just talk about her, highlight her, just humanize her. And regardless of her being with a white man, she still did not deserve to die. So rest in peace, Kathleen Moore. And I pray that there's justice in your case, and that the perpetrator, gets the punishment he deserves. So I do thank you for checking in on this live. For those who did join the live and for those who catch the playback, please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I am a smaller YouTube channel that is growing. Thank you, subs. Please continue to subscribe, and I will catch you on the next broadcast. Peace.